Guys, it's Fonzie with DipYourCar.com. This is the Dipping Industry Dipping Podcast, episode number 17.
Got it.
It's Fonzie from Dip Your Car, coming from live from our New York City studios. It's not live, and we're not in New York, but this is the new studio finally. With me, as always, is Adam and our sound engineer, Dan, who's in a completely different part of the studio now. So he's not going to be able to do his head bob. I just hope that he's got all of his toys and buttons and gizmos on his desk. So hopefully he'll keep that stuff in line. We've got an interesting show for you guys today. We've got the new studio. We didn't have an episode last week, so we want to make up for that. We've got some topics. We've got an interesting guest kind of outside of the ballpark of dipping a little bit. That's definitely relevant to a lot of the questions and topics that come up. And Adam, what else are we covering?
So we're obviously, we welcomed ourselves to the new studio. We're going to talk a little bit about some exciting sponsorships that we have coming up. We have some questions that were sent in that we're going to cover, and I know that we have somebody on the phone right now that you've kind of worked with a lot over the last couple of years.
On our YouTube videos, a lot of our cars in our YouTube videos, they're all shop cars, and a lot of them are modified, whether it's the wheels, the suspension, the exhaust, performance things, intake, things like that. And a lot of the comments that we get on our Facebook and our YouTube are questions about modifying cars. And Dip Your Car is not a company that handles the modification of cars. So I figured, instead of addressing all these questions individually, what's the best way to address them all at once? Now, there's a lot of our fans that have modified cars. This may be remedial stuff for you guys, but a lot of our fans who have these questions, I figured, what's the best, most effective way to address these? Well, there's been one guy who's modified all of my cars for the past 12 years now, and that's Chris Green, the owner of USP Motorsports. Chris, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Fonzie.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing, man?
Good. Now, Chris is literally the guy. I mean, I don't know how many. This isn't about my personal cars, but I've brought definitely over 15 cars to you in the past 12 years, and you have modified all of them for me, from Ford Mustangs to where you specialize in the European branch, from everything. Now, you've been in this business for how long now?
Started actually about 17 years ago, and started the business about 15 years ago. So in the year 2000, I think we met in, I want to say, maybe 2004, 2005, maybe, something around there, when you brought your, I want to say, probably first car, Audi A4, right?
Yeah, it was a B6 or a B7 A4. It was the first car that I've had modified. And Chris and I relate on a couple different levels. Not only are we both car guys in our own different fields, but Chris started his business out of his garage as well. And same as Dip Your Car. So him and I have a lot to relate to. So it'd be impossible, Chris, to go over everything that can be done to every car. But let's just go from a kid or a guy or person, woman, whoever, who's interested in modifying their car. They've got a stock car. I'm going to take you through a couple different pieces of that, and you can just try to help guide us in the direction that we would want to go in to start. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now, one of the first things that a lot of people want to do is they want to get aftermarket wheels. Aftermarket wheels on a car can change the complete look of the car, for better or for worse, and we've all seen that go in good directions and bad directions. But if you want to start by modifying your wheels, give us an idea of what you should look into. I mean, you can do something like starting off, and this isn't a commercial for USP. The reason why I brought Chris on is because that's the one individual that I've gone to for pretty much almost everything for this long now. So the first phone call I make is to him and his team. So if you have a car, whether it's an American car, Japanese, European, what's one of the first things that you want to think about, or one of the first steps you take if you want to do aftermarket wheels?
Well, definitely you got to set a budget with the customer. So you definitely want to come up with, hey, what's the realm of price you're looking at? That way it can determine if you're looking at a one-piece wheel, a three-piece wheel, a custom wheel, an off-the-shelf cast. You really got to start up with that. And you also have to come up with a goal of, what's the height you want the car at, because that determines a lot of tire size. And you also have different offsets, and those are things that some of the listeners might understand, they might not know. And that's something that you've come to me many years and said, hey, what size wheels will fit on this car, and how much can we make them stick out where they're flush with the fenders? Those are all the basic things, really. So really coming up with a price point of what your budget is that you want to spend on a good set of wheels and tires, and really nail it down from there. If a customer comes to us and says, we're in the $2,000 range. Well, we know we can't go with a custom 3-piece wheel. We got to stay more probably off the shelf, one piece, so to say.
So if I'm a consumer, I have really two priorities or two pieces of homework to do. One is identify my budget, and then the second is get an idea of the style of wheel. And one of the things that I've always done that's worked really well with you and your team is I'll go on Google Images and I will go in and say I have a 2011 A4. I'll go in, I'll type in 2011 A4 wheels or rims, and I will try to find a couple images of wheels that I like the style of. And that gives your guys a chance to just kind of get the ball rolling. Because if I come to you and say I want wheels, and you say, well, what style do you want? And I say, I don't care, tell me what looks good. That's just too wide of a canvas for you guys to work with.
It doesn't work with us. That's the worst thing for us. Customer calls up and says, hey, I want a set of wheels. I'm like, okay, great. Well, what do you like?
Yeah.
There's 1,000 wheel companies out there. I mean, they're a dime a dozen now. So when a customer comes with no, that becomes real hard, because the days of us flipping through catalogs with customers in front of us, those days are long gone.
Sure. So
now it's, you come to me with a pre-qualified of what you're looking for.
Right. So if I as a consumer, I get my budget down and I come to you with an idea of the style, you guys can help put me in the right wheel at that time.
Yeah, then we'll go into the right wheel. We'll look at a correct brand. All these different cars, if you use a universal wheel, I mean, you and I have dealt with this person on a personal level of getting aftermarket wheels for cars that don't either cater to that car or fit, and we have to use, different lug nuts and different centering hubs that might have the car vibrate. And of course, I don't want you coming back and complaining to me.
No.
We have to, we have to do all the correct forecasting of this wheel, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a right and a wrong way to do wheels.
Yeah,
this is the end of the story.
I mean, you and I literally have done this many times. So we've kind of learned over the years of, hey, let's get it right the first time.
Yeah, and you can get a really good set of wheels for not that expensive. It's not necessarily about spending a ton of money, but
no, not at all.
But you want it to fit right. You want it to fit right and ride right.
The most important thing, because at the end of the day, you can have a great looking wheel, but if a customer calls us up and they says their car is vibrating at 70 miles an hour, and we know the tire's balanced right, it's like we're kind of, we're down that wrong creek.
Sure.
Because we don't have a way to fix that. So, that comes from, dealing with a shop that knows, what wheels fit what cars, and also experience with, with the brand. They've had personal experience with it. They've sold 1 million sets of these wheels. They know they work.
Yeah.
So, when people are just, if they just go online and buy wheels, I wouldn't say that's the best thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of great online sites for wheels, but you kind of want to have somebody you can go back to with a personal touch that has hands-on with wheels. So
the local, connection is important. So moving on from wheels. One of the next things that we can do, and we'll cover just a handful of this stuff, but moving on from wheels, suspension is a big deal. Now, we're not going to talk about sway bars and different things like that are necessarily going to improve the handling of the car, but let's just stay with cosmetics for a minute. One of the biggest things that you've seen, Chris, 1,000 times, we see it all the time. You can post up a picture of a regular painted car, a dipped car, a wrapped car, a car with wheels. If that car is sitting up high and there's a big fat wheel gap there, how long is it before somebody jumps in and goes, needs more low, bro?
Yeah, needs more
5
low,
seconds.
Or,
5 seconds.
We need to slam this thing. You got to poke the wheels. I mean, that's obviously, that's the number one thing in any performance industry that you start with is suspension. I have guys that, they'll come here to the shop and they don't even want to go fast. They just want the thing to look low and cool.
Right.
And there's many ways to do that, right? Just like wheels, there's right ways to do it. There's wrong ways to do it. There's real expensive ways to do it. It all really depends on the goals when guys are doing suspension. That's kind of where you're getting at. It's like, hey, what are you doing with this car?
So if we can cover it in the simplest way possible, let's throw 3 options out there. You've got springs, you've got coilovers, and you've got airbag setups. If you can give me like 1 or 2 pros and cons of each one as we go through, it'll help maybe give an idea. Maybe it's price, maybe it's ride quality, maybe it's the ease of use. What would you suggest from super end, beginner low end stuff to all the way up to that high end?
Well, definitely a beginner thing. When guys come to the shop and say, hey, I want to go more low, I say to them, well, the first thing you do is we start out with a set of springs. But of course, the upside to that is a big price difference. You're just install a set of springs is cheap.
Mm-hmm.
The downside to that is you have a lowered spring on a factory shock, which shortens the travel of that factory shock and now makes the car ride worse than it did factory.
Yeah.
Which of course gets that whole bounciness feel, and that's why you see some cars going down the road bouncing around, and you wonder why that is. Well, that's probably because they have springs on a shock that's most likely blown. So of course that's what a lot of guys do that are just looking for just a lowered car and with no performance in mind. Now, the next level up from there is what you said, Fonzie, was the coilover system, which we've done many of those on cars that you've brought to us. That's the next step up, and definitely the best thing I recommend, because it comes with a shock. Most of the time, the coilover kits come with a shock as well. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone right there. The next biggest thing about the coilover, you have adjustable height. So we put a set of wheels on the car. You don't like how low it is, we can raise it, lower it if it rubs. So you have a lot of adjustability with coilovers compared to, say, a set and go on just a set of springs.
Right. And I could see Dan, our sound guy, off camera right now just nodding his head like, I'm totally going to do this to my Chevy Aveo.
Absolutely. Yeah, don't have anybody call me. We're already way too busy. Please tell me. All right?
And then moving from there, you've got the airbag set up. Now, where's our pros and cons on that?
Well, airbags are interesting because I come from, my background is mainly performance. I'm a gearhead. Obviously, all my race cars I own and stuff. So airbags to me, when they first came out, were threw me off a little bit. Threw me off because to me it was about slamming the car with zero performance in mind. Now in our industry, we work on European cars. Airbags is a huge thing in our marketplace.
Yeah.
So we have to cater to that. Whether I like it or not, we have to cater to it. And over the years, as stuff has progressed, I've actually started to like it on certain controllers they have and everything. I've kind of started to got into it and like it a little bit. So most of the guys we sell airbags to are the ones that are normally cars that are like a show car. A lot of those guys love airbags. They do a real nice display in the back with their air tanks, their compressors, and all that. The only real downside to that can be alignment issues with airbags. You have so many different heights, it's almost physically impossible to set an alignment point for one particular ride. So a lot of guys try to do it, but then they'll end up driving the car low, and then the tires just get eaten up. No matter what we do, we can't fix that. So the difference with airbags is they can cost a lot of money as well, and they're big installs. Sometimes require cutting frames, cutting rear parts of the suspension. So it's a much more involved install. A lot of guys do it themselves, which some come out good, some don't.
Yeah.
But for any shop to do it, it's inexpensive to do it right. So before you even think about getting airbags, you got to know that you're going to spend a pretty penny no matter what kind of car you have if you're going to do a system correctly.
So you've got springs, inexpensive, really no control on ride height, and a little bit of loss of ride quality. Coilovers is in the middle, more expensive than springs. You get full control within a range and maintain some ride quality. Airbags is kind of its own animal. That's the type of thing.
Animal, yeah.
It's going to put the car flat on the ground. 2 seconds later, it could be 5 feet up in the air. I mean,
yeah, there you go.
The
ride quality on the airbag is not bad when they're higher. They're actually, they do what they ride on air, right? So it's like kind of a Cadillac, They have a great feel to them when they're up high. Sometimes when they're low, they can ride crappy. But it's really the customers we have that come in and want to do airbags. They're definitely not as many of them out there that are doing springs and everything else. But it's a customer that knows what they want. I've never had a customer to come in and ask for airbags that doesn't know what they want. They've already pre-qualified themselves to say, hey, I want to go with this control system. I want to do this. It's almost like they've done so much homework into it. And a lot of guys that don't know anything about airbags might say, yeah, I want airbags. As soon as they start looking into how much they're going to have to budget for the project, it could go a little over.
Sure. Well, because a lot of times what you can do is you just want your car to look a certain way, and there's a lot of pieces that you want to do to it, and then when you find out that one piece takes up the budget for everything, you kind of pull back. Last piece of the puzzle, one of the most common things and one of the first things that I do to the majority of the cars that I have is exhaust. I'm a big exhaust guy. I've changed exhaust systems 5 or 6 times on the same car.
Yeah, should I start to talk about some of your cars, how many times we've changed?
Let's leave those records private for now.
Okay.
I could be a bit picky about that. Now, from an exhaust point of view, again, I don't want to say a simple mod, but a beginner mod, something that can change the entire attitude of your car. We don't want to go overboard. I mean, is it true that you want to start with something simple like an axle back or a cat back and then work your way up so that you don't go too loud too soon? I mean, how do you guide a customer when he says, "Hey, I want some more noise out of my car"?
Well, that's a good question because an exhaust is an expensive part to do to the car. It ranges anywhere from about $500 to $1,500 on the average car nowadays to do an exhaust system. So the last thing we want to do, or any shop wants to do, is install exhaust in your car, and you say, "Hey, man, this is too loud," or "Hey, this is too quiet." Because now the shop is normally scratching their head if they bought an off-the-shelf exhaust system and they don't know how to please that customer.
Yeah.
So that's a good question: is where do you start? A lot of the turbocharged cars, they use what's called a downpipe. Comes off the turbocharger. That helps a lot with power. We've done some of those on your cars.
Oh yeah.
Those don't add a lot of sound, but they add power. If the customer is looking for sound out of it, then they do an exhaust system, which would be an axle back or catback system. Normally, those don't add a lot of power. They're more sound and looks, of course. But if you complete it with a downpipe, they can be power adders as well.
Okay.
So, I mean, where I start with it, if the guy comes in and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a little sound, maybe I want a little power," of course, you want to do a catback right away.
Yeah.
So, guys, this is only, of course, this is only referencing to turbo cars, but downpipes are a huge improvement. I'm sure most of the listeners that have turbo cars are probably nodding their head like, "Yeah,
Sure.
actually, I have one of those downpipes. They made 80 horsepower on my car," whatever the case is.
Sure.
But if they did a full system, that's even more horsepower. But that's realistically where I would start. What are you looking for in this? Are you looking for to be super loud? I mean, heck, you've come to me and said, "Hey, you want this car screaming down the street," and I've done it.
Yeah, and then you've given me the car back and be like, "Dude, you can't drive this on the street like that."
Yeah, I've told you, "Hey, I
I know.
mean, you can't drive this car on the street." You told me, "No, I want it louder." I'm like, "Okay."
Well, I've slowly grown out of that little by little. But so we've got three major pieces to that puzzle. You've got your wheels, your suspension, and your exhaust. With those three things, you can completely change your car, almost to where you have almost in your head a brand new car. So at this point, would it be safe to say, Chris, that obviously USP Motorsports isn't the only place you can get this stuff done, but if you're a customer, or you're a listener, or a consumer right now, and you're thinking, you know what, I was actually kind of thinking about doing that, they can call your team. You can go to uspmotorsports.com. They have a bunch of guys there that know everything about this stuff. Get in touch with their sales team. And if anything, just talk to them about what your options are. And the guys at USP will walk you through. And then you can make an educated decision from there. Whether it's getting the stuff through USP or somewhere local, there's a lot of options. And this is the stuff that I do to every single car that I get basically within weeks of when I get them. It just helps it personalize it for me and make it a little bit more unique.
Definitely. I don't know if that statement was true weeks. I would say maybe days, right?
For the most part, but that Porsche is still bone stock, dude. I don't know what I'm doing with that.
You're right. You're right about that. We've looked at it, but I don't know. We just can't come up with what we're doing, right?
Whatever. We'll figure it out step by step. But again, uspmotorsports.com. Chris Green, one of my favorite dudes in the industry. He's done a lot of favors for me. He's done a lot of work for me. I've pestered him countless hours, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Enjoy, guys.
All right, brother. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, take care.
That's a good dude right there.
Good dude. You stole my line. Unbelievable.
It's funny that you say you outgrew that, because then when the shop car, the Mustang, comes to corporate, or the RS6, it sounds like, the building's going to collapse on itself.
Maybe I outgrew it after I modded those cars.
Touche.
What's the next thing on the docket?
All right. Well, the next thing that we're going to kind of talk about is we got a couple exciting sponsorships coming up along the way.
Yes. Okay, you guys know that we like to sponsor UFC fighters. The UFC is a great piece for us. It's right in our target demographic, 18 to 38-year-old males. I personally am a UFC fan. You as well. A bunch of the employees at DipYourCar are UFC fans. So it means a lot to us, not only from a business point of view to get involved in the UFC, but from a personal point of view, we genuinely enjoy it as well. Mm-hmm. Dan being one of the biggest Ronda Rousey fans in the world. So we've got... Basically, here's what's happening. If you haven't been keeping up with everything, the UFC and Reebok have struck a deal, meaning that, and the long and short of it is that come July 1st, 2015, there will be no other sponsorships for fighters. Nothing on their shorts, nothing on their walkout shirts, nothing on their banners, their hats, nothing during fight week, let alone the fight. So our ability, and this is ongoing, Reebok has taken over the whole thing. So our ability to sponsor UFC fighters after July 1st is gone. It's dissolved. So my thought was, well, let's take a couple more swings for the fences while we have a chance. So we were able to lock down the sponsorships for two of our largest UFC fighters so far. on May 16th, Frankie Edgar is fighting Uriah Faber in the Philippines. I was going to see if you were going to try and make a...
Throw a New Jersey comment out there. Okay. Oh, well, I just did.
Oh, there you go. Frankie Edgar versus Uriah Faber. Some people are calling it a super fight. Whether it is or isn't, it's not my place to say. But May 16th, Frankie Edgar, main sponsor is DipYourCar.com. He will be wearing DipYourCar gear during fight week. He will be walking out to his Biggie song that night at the fight to the octagon wearing a DipYourCar t-shirt. We're extremely, and hopefully after he beats Uriah Faber, he'll be rocking that that DipYourCar shirt in the octagon as well.
It already seems like it's become a favorite of his.
He wears it all the time and Instagrams it and everything. We love Frankie Edgar. He's been one of our favorite fighters for a very long time. So we're very proud. May 16th, make sure you catch that fight. I'm pretty confident that it's a free fight as well.
Yeah.
Then UFC 187 in May 23rd, the following week. One of the biggest fight cards of the year because you've got John Bones Jones defending his light heavyweight title. Then in the same fight card, you got Chris Weidman defending his middleweight title, or welterweight. Middleweight, probably. It doesn't matter.
He's not from New Jersey, so,
New York is pretty close.
Yeah.
On that massive card, hopefully nobody's going to be getting injured. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who's been on a tear lately, he's won a ton of fights in a row. He's been kicking the crap out of a lot of people, is fighting Habib Nurmagomedov or something around that range, Russian guy, who is an outstanding fighter. I mean, I'm not going to say this out loud, but I think Donald's going to have a heck of a fight ahead of him.
Wait, just said that out loud.
No, what I was going to say, I kept internal.
Oh, okay.
And then didn't say it out loud. That's Saturday, May 23rd. Again, DipYourCar, his main sponsor. He's going to be walking out to the octagon in a DipYourCar t-shirt and hopefully rocking a DipYourCar t-shirt if and when he beats Habib at the end of that fight. So those are two major UFC fights coming out. We'll put that stuff out on our social media, but help support the DipYourCar fighters for the last couple times that we get a chance to do this. What do we got next?
Okay, so we're going to move on. Darren wants to know, he had been watching some older videos and had seen that in a couple of those you were wearing a backpack, a gallon backpack, and he wasn't sure if anybody else out there remembered it or had seen those videos.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know what happened to them. Why don't we use them?
Okay, there was a 1 gallon Earlix backpack that we tried out for a while. We used it for a couple of videos and we sold it on the website. We then found out that there was a flaw in that product. Mm-hmm. At the bottom of what looked like it was like a suitcase shape, and you wear it on your back. It had very uncomfortable straps. It had these very thin canvas straps that like cut into your tissue. And because a gallon of product is heavy, man, you got that stuff on your back. At the very bottom of this suitcase is this little valve, and that valve is where the hose would hook into the product. The problem is that valve was not solvent resistant. It would soften, and after some time, it would break. Mm-hmm. And when it would break was in the middle of dipping a car. Now, what would happen when it would break is, and we've talked about this, when you make the lines on a soccer field, how you've got that machine that you push and there's just this chalk that falls out the back of it and creates these lines?
It's not chalk, it's a spray can.
It used to be chalk.
It used to be chalk.
And anyway, that's what you turn into. When that valve breaks and you've got a full hopper of dip, you basically walk around the car, walk around the shop, and you're leaving a trail of dip squirting out behind you that you don't even realize is happening until you run out of dip or you feel it on the back of your legs.
If anybody knows how active you are and how much you pace, I'm sure that was just...
And yeah, I'm all over the shop. I mean, I'm everywhere. And once that thing pops off, unless somebody sees you and screams, dude, which has happened, you're walking around your own shop, drawing lines of paint, dumping it out the back without even knowing it. That happened enough times to where we had a formal complaint with the company. They decided they were going to commit to adjusting that product. I think they have made some strides to do that, but since we've moved away from it, it's just the backpack needs to be completely revamped, and until it is completely revamped and fully tested, it won't be offered at DipYourCar.com.
The pros don't outweigh the cons at this point.
No, the cons are pretty terrible.
Right.
I mean, not only do you draw lines of dip everywhere and on yourself, but you run through the product that you probably need to finish your dip job.
All right.
So that's off.
All right. Well, we have another good question. Chang wanted to know, why don't we have any videos out for our glow products?
The glow. I'm going to try and handle this as politically correct as I can. The glow product is pretty cool
Mhm.
for what it is. It does glow. Outside of that, I'm not sure it's applicable to vehicle installations.
Mhm.
Is that fair to say? If you spray it on wheels, for example, it's got to go over a white base coat. You spray it over your wheels. The texture that you're left with is a very dry and gritty texture.
Mhm.
The feel of the wheel is very dry and almost powdery. The coverage of the pigment is very inconsistent. And this is not a knock against Plasti Dip's attempt at this product. This is glow powder for the majority.
Mhm.
Almost with very few exceptions, all usage of glow powder has these issues. Very inconsistent coverage. If you've got one of those fat 5-spoke Dodge Challenger wheels and you try to get you would imagine in your head right now a solid consistent glow on each spoke.
Right.
You're going to see light spots, dark spots. It's very difficult. 9, 10, 11 coats deep to get a solid coverage on that.
Right.
It's also very expensive. It's not cheap. And that's, again, not towards Plasti Dip's decision. It's the product, the resources, the raw materials. So my thought was, it's very cool for what it is. Small projects, safety issues, things like that. I think it does a great job.
Mhm.
I just don't know if it makes sense for usage on vehicles. And that's fine, because Plasti Dip doesn't just make products for the use on cars.
Right.
We adapt a lot of them to the use on cars, and now that we've evolved, a lot of their stuff is made specifically for the use on cars. That product may not be one of them. And if it's something that I don't think the majority, like if there's 100 people that buy a product from Dip Your Car in a day or a week, I would like as close to 100 of those 100 people to enjoy the product, to be
Right.
proud of their purchase, and to feel like they got their money's worth. If that number slides away from 100, it makes me nervous, and I probably am not going to carry that product. That's why we don't carry glow powder
Right.
through the Dip Pro line, because not 10 out of 10 people are going to be happy with the outcome, and that's not good enough.
Right. Right.
So now, but however, keep in mind, reflection technology is a lot different than glow technology. And don't be surprised, I can't say anything too specific, but don't be surprised if you see Plasti Dip release a product that really locks in the reflection technology to where it's, if this mug looks like this mug now, but when in the dark, when a light hits it, it lights up like crazy and reflects that light. Don't be surprised if you see a product like that coming out in the second quarter of 2015, because that would be pretty awesome.
Cool. Cool. Christian actually recently started up a business in Japan, and he wanted to know is when you had first started the company, did you have any outside investors, or was it completely funded through personal funds?
We didn't have any outside investors. That may even be a topic for another episode where we can talk about business specific, because I know there's a lot of people that listen to this that are starting their own businesses and have questions about that. And a lot of the people that start their own businesses who find success are going to get suggestions or are going to get offers or opportunities for people to invest in their business and then want percentage of ownership. And maybe we can cover that in another episode, because maybe that's something that we can talk through a little bit, the pros and cons of taking an investment and giving up parts of your business. Let's push that for next week if we can, because we're already at 30 minutes. There's a lot I'd like to say about that, and there's a lot that I learned out of experience for it. So look forward to that on the next episode.
All right. Well, do you want to have one more question then?
Yeah.
Quick one. All right. Well, Kevin wanted to know, with the new release of the quartz, is there going to be any chance for, like a standard black or one of our more popular PDS gallons to go to quartz, something other than the Dip Pearl top coat?
That's a good question. Is there a chance or an opportunity for that? Yeah, of course there is. But I have to make sure that it makes sense. I think what some people realize and what other people fail to realize is that every product, every color that Dip Your Car decides to carry we have to carry it in such a high volume
Mhm.
that that it's a big investment.
Right.
If we carry quartz, I have to carry somewhere, but I have to bring in initially somewhere between 4 and 5,000 quarts of every single color to make sure that we can, go through whatever 3 to 4 week lead time we'd be looking at. We don't like to go on back order anymore. I mean, look when we brought in the Dip Pearl top coat, the gallons. We had north of 8,000 gallons coming in for the launch, and it's funny because some days I'd be like, man, 8,000 gallons for the first however long that could take us a while.
Right.
And on the other hand, I'm like, you know what? Let's make sure we don't get at it. We don't go into back order.
Right.
And look what happened. That 8,000 came and went. And now we're really glad that we did that. And thank God we got more coming in. So what people, again, what they have to realize is if I decide to carry black, white, clear, gunmetal, and maybe like whatever, true metallics and quartz for small testing purposes and things like that, every single one of those colors is going to be a big investment. And we've got all these other things that we're doing, and there's only so much money to allocate towards each project. Would you see black and maybe clear in quartz in the future? I would say it's possible, but don't expect to see the whole 28 or 30 color line in quartz down the road.
Right.
At least not anytime in the near future, because point is this. Somebody would have to convince me that there's enough projects that require a quart of black RDS that can't be done with a black aerosol.
Right.
And let's see how big that gap is.
Right.
If somebody's saying, dude, you should definitely do black quartz, convince me that there's enough of a reason to use a quart of black that you can't use a black aerosol for.
Right.
And once we have that conversation, and once I kind of think that through, we'll take it from there.
All right. He also actually wanted to touch base on, are there any plans for any new pearls? I mean, I know we just came out with the Candy Pearl line, but is there any new pearls on the
We'll be squeaking out more pearls. The majority of pearls that we get at DipYourCar through the Dip Pearl line, about 85 to 90%, are acquired through Pearls and Pigments down in Houston. And then we're very proud to bring on the Candy Pearl line or a select number of the Candy Pearl pearls, and we'll be adding to that little by little as we go. We'll be bringing more pearls into the Dip Pearl line, but right now what I really want people to focus on is utilizing what we have.
Right.
I think a lot of the solid pearls, for example, got swallowed up in the excitement of the color shifts. Color shifts everywhere. Everybody wants to do color shifts. There are some gorgeous solid pearls that haven't gotten to see the light of day yet. And what I would like to do personally is refocus and backtrack on some of these solid pearls on some of our videos and shop cars, and show people how amazing some of these solid pearls can look using the Dip Pearl top coat and utilizing that clarity.
Right.
Once we cycle through that and show what's really possible with some of these what would be considered simple or older pearls, then we'll start bringing more in.
Right.
We're always testing and looking through new pearls, red pearls, color shift pearls, because we want to keep the stuff fresh, but we have so much saturation right now. It's almost like throwing gas on a fire that's already massive. Like, let's let the fire burn for a minute and then keep it fresh.
Right, because I actually saw that on the community earlier this morning. Somebody asking, has anybody used, I forget which pearl it was specifically, and copied and the speed shape and posted the speed shape on there, and there was nothing, and it was a beautiful looking pearl, but and it's kind of interesting to kind of go off topic, but I think that's going to kind of wrap it up. But I like the direction that the show's kind of going. Next week we might throw in that business topic.
Yeah.
We had some modification topic, which is relevant to this community because,
of course,
what we ultimately do is modify cars. So it's kind of cool, but it's instead of a straight line to modification, it was like
we're going to be bringing stuff in that's relevant to people that listen. I mean, if there's car modifications and stuff like that, I mean, the thing is that we didn't just pull the topic of car modifications out of thin air and jam it down people's throats. It's been excessive amounts of questions on our videos. Dude, how did you get your car to look like that? Where should I go for wheels? We get emails and stuff based on us using modified cars in videos. People want to know how to get it done. So we will take topics that are brought to us and interject them into the program. But yeah, with the new studio now, we're finally in here. It looks different. It feels completely different. Awesome. We've got a lot of the audio stuff tweaked out by Dan, and everything's running crystal clear and super smooth. But besides that, we're just so excited to make sure we get a new episode in you guys in your face every week and give you some new topics. And please, one of the most important things that you guys can do, and we've got some really core fans. I would name names, but I wouldn't remember them all, and I would piss people off. But some really core fans that participate in the DipCast often, one of the most important things and most valuable things you can do is shoot Adam emails of questions and topics that you want to hear covered on a weekly basis, because that is our data bank. That's what we dive into, and that's what we use. And it's important not only to give us content, but content we know you guys want to hear.
Right. And especially because I'll field a lot of calls during the course of the week that says, "Oh, I listen every week. Here are my questions. Can you answer?" And yeah, I mean, if you want an immediate response, you give us a call, you can email. Yeah. But like, if you have a question that's gonna, a lot of people are gonna probably be interested.
If you have a question, chances are there's a lot of other people that are thinking the same thing.
Exactly.
And in the meantime, Dan has been getting his butt kicked on his hardcore gaming platforms.
False.
We've had some Dip Your Car fans that have been challenging him on, what is it, Xbox?
Yes.
Game Boy? And they've been kicking his butt in what games? Battlefield or something?
Battlefield, Call of Duty.
He's all over the place, guys. So his call sign is Velezomite. I'll spell it somewhere on the bottom here because I'm not going to try to do that. But feel free to get on there and knock him dead a couple times. And Adam, being a massive video game guy as well, NBA 42.
The last system I owned was like Nintendo 64.
And you play it every day. All right, guys, we'll check you on the next episode.